Hello and welcome to this week's edition of The Author's Eye with me, your host, Derek M. Cartwright. Now, this week I'm joined by I'm going to say thriller writer, is that the right way?
I would say
J.L.
that.
O'Connor. Are you happy with that one, Janine?
I'm
It's the
very happy with that.
psychological thrillers that you write, psychological domestic thrillers, I think.
So yeah, I
People
mean,
don't,
my first book was espionage thriller, and now I'm moving more to a little bit more psychological, I
yeah,
think. Yeah, but all
yeah,
thrillers.
Okay,
yeah.
well, all thrillers. And I've also got with me the science fiction writer, Sally and Amelia. Hello, people.
Hello,
Hello.
Mark.
Hello, hello. Right, so this week we've got a subject regarding the mistakes that the first-time novelists commonly make. Let's put it that way. Now, this isn't a question of casting shade on anybody or anything else. It's just really to look at the things that we, as you know, we're our first-time writers, and some of us still make some of these mistakes even now. So, it's not a question of having a go, but it's a way of trying to highlight things that maybe we could do better. So we leave it at that. So let's push this one over. Sally, why don't you kick us off on this?
Okay, so I'll start with three. I think we can easily
Oh,
remember
that's just
three.
greed. You're just going
Door
greedy
and
there.
Explorer. I think the first one, which I did in spades when I started, which is to swap viewpoints within a chapter or within a sentence. So you'll have two or three people or four people on stage, and you'll be what they call head hopping. You'll see it from one person's point of view and then the other person's point of view. And the correct rule for this is to choose one character and stick with them for the entire chapter.
Yeah.
And do you know what? I was listening to Born of Empire on the audiobook this month, and one of the chapters towards the end, when they're all packing up to go, I thought, crikey, I've actually done it right in the middle. It should have been two chapters, and I've done a scene swap where I change characters' point of view, and I thought, how did I miss that? That should have been a chapter, and then it would have been absolutely fine. Instead of that, I seem to be head hopping a little bit. I don't know. You could call it head hopping.
Just
You
to
could just say
interrupt, I'm going to interrupt because just for the listener,
yes.
what it's probably worth saying that Sally has just done a shameless plug of her own book. Okay, so don't go looking for this thinking, oh, who's this famous author or whatever it is.
Exactly.
It is the famous or infamous author, Sally Amelia. Anyway, sorry, Sally, I do apologize for interrupting. Point number two you were about to make.
Uh, Point number two is knowing what uh, what tense you're going to write in. So you can do first person, which means that you write the story in I. So I woke up one morning and discovered a dragon had eaten my wardrobe. Or you can do it in second person, which is she woke up that morning to discover. That's actually third person. So you woke up in the morning and found the dragon had eaten your clothes. That's second person. Third person is she woke up in the morning and discovered a dragon had eaten her clothes. And a third person storyteller is in a distant in the distant vale of Progamia. The beautiful damsel woke up to discover the dragon had eaten her wardrobe. So there are different
Yeah, yeah.
ways of addressing the story. Now, a lot of literary fiction, there are rules. Literary fiction is nearly always written in either the first, or when they're getting very fancy and want to win the Booker Prize, in the second person. When you're doing good old-fashioned stories like thrillers or fantasy or science fiction, just stick to the storytelling voice. And storytelling voice, if you don't know what it is, it always starts with once upon a time. If you could start your story with once upon a time and suggest you delete that, once you get into that, then you are in the storyteller voice. And I absolutely love the storyteller voice. It's perfect.
Yep.
You could write in close third. So I've written my
Yes.
first two books in third, but I write in close third,
Yeah.
which means that you're almost in your protagonist's head and you can hear what they're thinking. So you're still, she walked over to the table And then you can have her internal thought thinking, oh my God, what am I going to say next? As your protagonist saying that. So I think there's different types of third person. You can be very much storyteller. She did this, she did that, they did this is what's happening. And then you can actually be inside your protagonist's head while still writing in third person. So I write close third. Although this current book is the first book I'm writing in first person. So that's going to be interesting for me.
So you're not knowing any better. My first novel was written in first person, and I found it as I got into it. It started off, oh, it's very easy because yeah, I am this person or whatever. And as I got into it and more into it, and trying when you're bringing other characters in, you can't really say what they might be thinking
Yeah, it's
because
restricting, isn't it?
it
It's
becomes
restricting.
quite a restrictive exercise. So hence why I no longer write in the first person. But yeah,
I
it's
think I can
interesting.
beat you there, Mark, because I actually was one of my novels. I wrote it in third person, then I wrote it in the first person. Then I decided because there was 2 points of views, I'd have one in the first person and one in the third point, which is quite going something. And then I changed the gender of one of the characters to see what that looked like. I actually rewrote the same novel about 4 times.
I was going
And
to
then I
say, how
decided
many rewrites?
actually storyteller voice was where it was at with close third.
Yeah,
And
wow.
until you've actually done it, I have actually did write something in the second person just to have a go to see what it like. It's interesting, but you can only use it. The most best examples is in Red Dragon, um, where they've got the serial killer and the policeman. And the policeman, when he comes to the crime of the scene, he stands there and then he starts talking in second person. He says, "You walked into the woman's room. You saw she was sleeping. You paused to take it in, and then you step forward, and then
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
then
I mean, I
describes
think
the murder."
advice for new writers
Mm,
is read your genre and see what is the common way that people write for your genre. Because some this you can lean to third person for thrillers. There are quite a lot of psychological thrillers that actually are in first person, but just I think I would read broadly in the genre that you want to write in and see how that's written, and then maybe go with that because that's what people would expect.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I would expand it when it comes to saying about mistakes that first time novelists make. I think to expand it further is that lack of genre research.
Mm,
It, more than the point of view, it's about a wider, aspect of the research. It's that kind of thing and knowing your target audience,
yeah,
who are you writing
pitfalls.
this particular thing for. But
Mm.
yeah, sorry. Yes, I just thought I'd interject there. Right,
And then
sorry,
last,
Sally,
the
was there
third
any?
one
Yeah,
is when you write the end. I mean, apart from being the best feeling in the entire world, bar
yeah,
none,
absolutely.
um, when you write the end, it's not over. It's just the beginning.
Yeah.
But getting this, do enjoy the moment because getting to the end is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember the first time, the first one, I got to that point, and it was just like, yeah, yeah, I've done it. Yeah, I've done it. This is something I wanted to do for 30 odd years or whatever, and I've actually done it. I've actually put in, yeah, it's a pile of pants, but you know what? I've done it. But yeah,
Still
so
written.
yeah, I definitely go with it. Right then, Janine, have you got anything from, that
I've
you
got
would
no.
suggest?
I didn't have to do much research because I just looked back at my early writing. That's as far as I had to go. So, I mean, one of the things that stand out to me as quite amateur, because obviously I did this, is writing step by step, you sort of micro writing. For example, she walked into the room, she put her hand on the handle and turned it and took a step into
Mm,
the room and pushed the door closed behind her. And every step by step where you just need to say she entered the room. And I think I was doing that. I was literally, telling you which way somebody looked, to the right, to the left, they lifted their hand. It was just too much detail.
yeah.
So that was a very common one for me. Second one, I think, is cliches. Cut the cliches. I mean, somebody once said to me, "Oh, you should never have in your book," and then all hell was let loose. And I literally had that line in my book at the end of a chapter saying, "and then all hell let loose." I'm thinking, okay, so get rid of the cliches, find a way to get your message across without using cliches, which is
And
really, really
it goes for cliche dialogue as well. And you see it quite a lot in modern young adult fiction where they use phrases from movies, and obviously that is teenage slang. So you want to speak like the kids, and but it's when you say put hasta la vista into a novel, you're referencing Terminator, by the way,
mm, mm,
or if you referencing, any other sort of anything else, any other movie or anything, you're sort of it may be common parlance, but you've got to strive for originality and give your characters their own voice, don't you?
mm. Yeah,
That's
no,
just
I
me.
think so. I mean, dialogue is a whole other. Yeah, I think dialogue is one of the things I've got on my massive list here because it's got to be realistic.
Yes.
Because read it out aloud. Is that how people really talk? You'll find a lot of dialogue that uses someone's name. So I'll be saying, well, Sally, how are you today, Sally? Did you enjoy your cup of tea, Sally? People don't speak like that, so don't write like that. Make it realistic. um, but that's just one of the many things on my list. The
Can
other
I just
classic.
come in on the using common expressions or things like that? I think within the comic and the satirical side of writing, I think you can because it something like Hasta la Vista Baby or something like that. It's such a pastiche that you can satirize it. So if you're writing in a comic kind of way uh, with humor, then I think you are and can use some, not obviously every sentence, or else, as you say, there's no originality in that. But I think if you're satirizing, it's just a
Mm,
view, it's an opinion.
yeah,
Sorry.
and if it's something your character would genuinely
Well,
say,
yeah,
because
absolutely. That's the
play with
point.
it,
Yeah.
yeah,
Because
comes
we
start.
all know people who are, when they speak, will speak in cliches, will say those sorts of things, and they'll have common expressions. You'll hear them say at the time. I'm guilty of that myself. There are certain expressions that I will say frequently because I'm a sad old man.
No,
There
you're
you
not.
go.
The other classic one, which I'm sure everyone knows about, is show not tell.
Yeah.
Don't say she was really angry or she was really scared. Show us, let's see that. Let's see the hair standing up on her arms. Let's see the gut wrenching here. Sorry, but let show us. Don't tell us. That's another, classic amateur mistake that you just want to tell the
Yeah.
story rather than make the reader see the story.
And one of the things I've picked up certainly since being a member of the writing group is to use all the senses when doing that. So evoke a sense of smell sometimes, try and find some way of giving your reader or imagination,
Yeah,
putting that into your reader's
you're trying
mind,
to
as it were.
paint a picture,
Yes.
not just tell a story. You can write something and someone will read it and say, okay, that was interesting. But you want them to see it and have their own experience of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely use all the senses because that evokes people's feelings, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Mm.
Adverbs is another one. Try not to, he said angrily. Things like that. No, you shouldn't need to say that because the scene that you've set for us, the dialogue that you're using should say he's angry. Should show us that he's
Yeah.
angry. So I think adverbs is a real common one for
Yeah.
beginners as well.
And the thing is as well, I've even speech verbs like he cried or he shouted or he whispered, or actually I think you can use all of those. Uh, but sometimes if you've got fast-paced dialogue, you actually don't want to get in the way of the dialogue, but you still
Yeah.
have to give the reader some clues. So you just put the name and the said, just put it in really quickly, and then sort of they can follow the dialogue, particularly if they're shouting at each other. They know who's saying what, but it's not
Yeah.
getting in the way.
Or
So
just don't use
I
them.
think it's interesting because if you read Dickens or that sort of early, shall we say, early prose, actually they did use a lot of adverbs around their dialogue, but certainly now in the sort of last 20 years or so, he said, she said is much more acceptable.
Because it does sort of disappear when you're writing, but I hardly ever use any dialogue tags.
Mm.
Hardly ever. If it's two people speaking, you shouldn't need to because you know who's speaking next.
Yeah,
And even if there's a lot of people, I'll show an action before, that
yeah,
someone will take a deep breath and then say something or whatever. But I
yeah.
rarely use dialogue tags. But maybe that's just my
No,
style. I
that's
don't think
probably
there's anything
your
wrong with
voice. And that's actually really interesting because when I write dialogue, I don't put the dialogue tags in. I sometimes throw in a name or something just to give, if I think I've gone quite a long time, they might not be following it. But invariably, if you put it into any kind of grammar checker, they'll start saying you've got to put dialogue tags in here, or
it.
proofreaders start saying it to you. And I'm not sure whether or not it's something that proofreaders think, oh, body hell, there's been 4 lines of dialogue and they haven't put a said or a name in anywhere. And they just pick up on it. Or or whether or not or you can just turn around and say, no, I'm not putting dialogue tags in that. That works perfectly well. And but I've had it come back at me quite a few times through proofreadings and through editorial comments I've had. Like they'll just say some of your dialogue is confusing, and what do you mean some of my dialogue? Oh, well, you haven't put the tags on it, and I think like, well, no, I don't think my dialogue's. And then you sort of like it's really difficult to come back on that. So you just think, oh, I just put the tags on,
Yeah,
problem goes away. Yeah.
yeah.
And I think you've got to be careful with that though, because there are lots of rules which actually really quite annoy me because I think rules are there to be broken. And people have preferences. At the end of the day, you're the author. So
Yes.
you write that story in the way you want to write it. But having said that, rules are there for a reason because if you break them too, if you're not experienced enough and you break them, then it just looks amateur. So break them if you know what you're doing. If you don't, maybe
Yeah.
stick more to the rules.
And again, it's literary fiction versus genre fiction. My stuff normally is young adult, and young adult, they're used to having it a bit more spoon-fed. Well, they like it more spelled out when it comes to dialogue. Whereas literary fiction, I mean, you'll find not only whole pages of dialogue where there's no names or anything, but you'll find it where it hasn't been punctuated, and it's practically looks like poetry, and that's perfectly well as well, and that works. And when you're inside that world, it works perfectly well. But genre
Mm.
fiction, and if you're storytelling, yes, you want beautiful writing, but actually you just want to tell the story sometimes as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's all
Mhm.
about the story, isn't it, really?
Mhm.
Yeah, but when it comes to story and plot, something else that I think is quite amateur, and I was very guilty of it, is when things are just too convenient in the story. You get to a river and you need a boat, and there's a boat. How convenient that they jump into, and other issues where there could be problems, there could be conflict, there could be something that makes it harder for your characters to do something. you know Run with that. Don't make it convenient. If they're looking for a key, don't let them find it after 5 minutes. Let them not find it, or not find it after 5 hours. But just, I read some things and everything is just so convenient, and exactly what they're looking for to solve the problem almost lands in their lap. And I think that's an issue of a beginner writer as well.
Come on then, what's next on your list then? Or I mean, I was because you're not leaving me an awful lot here.
Well, you should. Yeah, we've been dominating. You give us some of yours,
Well,
Mark.
no, I mean, I think for mine, I mean, one of the things I was certainly guilty of, and people at the writers group have pointed out, is info dumping. So I think when you're first writing your story, we will give pages and pages of background information, and we'll do it all up front, and we'll say, yeah, so and so was born here and lived there and did that and all the rest of it. And at the end of the day, that's just nobody is reading that. Nobody wants to read that kind of information dump. So info dumping. And then obviously we're talking about stories, and we also need to look at character development. And I think one of the other things that certainly I've been guilty of is not having characters, or not creating or writing characters that people are going to care about, whether they care about them in a good way or they care about them in a bad way and want them, done in or something like that. So I think something else to bear in mind. I think that we need to, 'cause, we want to tell good stories, and good stories are made in part by good characters, or at least not necessarily good as in good or evil, but as well-written characters. And one of the things I hate, certainly, I mean, I watch plenty of TV shows, and I don't give a toss about who the bloody characters are because I have no interest in them. And that
Mm.
turns me off when it comes to, TV or whether I'm reading a book or something like that. So that
Now,
would
I
be,
agree with that. They've got to be well-rounded with some depth, otherwise they're just a bit two-dimensional, and you've got to want to root for them.
yeah,
Even if they're going to bat, they're a murderer,
yeah,
or I think about Breaking Bad, and the main character there is he creates meths and sells it to people that's going to kill them, but you're really rooting for him because
yeah.
you know his situation.
And I think, yeah, exactly. And I think, and then my other one is my big thing is as someone who's spent 30 odd years not writing, who wants to write, but going, oh, I'd write a chapter and then I'd put it away and then, I'll pick it up a year later, I'll write another, I'll put it, oh, whatever. For me, despite the fact that we're talking about the mistakes, the common mistakes that new writers make, the critical thing is, as a new writer, is to write, is
Mm.
to actually get there. As Sally pointed out before, writing the end of something is an amazing feeling. And on that basis, the mistake I think sometimes that we make, and certainly I made in my 30 years, is editing while writing. So don't, write, tell your story. Just get down, write it down, tell your story. Don't do what I did, which is to go through, I need to change that there and then change that. And then I'm not writing.
Mm.
You could, if
That's
you get
right.
to the end, find an editor, give it to an editor. Or someone, a development editor, someone that can come back and tell you or point you in the right direction. Or they might turn around and say, what you've written is absolutely fantastic. But you can't get to any of that until you've got to the point where you've written the end. So there you go. They're my
No,
things,
I
really.
completely agree with that. I'm doing like an online course at the moment as well, which is brilliant. And that, the guy that's running the course is saying, if you're watching me, you're not writing. If you're researching, you're not writing. Just write every day. Your first draft will be absolutely rubbish, but then you've got something to work on.
Yeah,
So, and going back to your point about, info dump and extra information, I think there's one saying where they say arrive late and leave early.
yeah,
We don't need all the intro. We don't need travel. We don't know how, or need to know how somebody got there or how they're going to go from one place to another. Cut that. They just did. Unless something happens on a journey that's part of the plot. But just get to the action, get to the important thing, and everything before it. Sometimes it's just the author writing themselves into the story, but I would
yeah,
cut that, start at the important bit, and then once you've got that across, leave. Leave the
yeah,
scene. Don't let it go on and on and on. Um, and the only other thing that I would say is wordiness. I think you can cut a lot of words that are just unnecessary, lots of that's and justs, and
and
suddenly
so,
and
And maybe,
so, yeah. And
yeah,
one example I saw, there's a river rushing past quickly. Well, if it's rushing past, it is quickly.
yeah,
So get rid of quickly. And there's just words that you can just cut from your
yeah,
first draft and then make it a bit more
yeah,
succinct.
yes, no, that's
I
very
think that
true.
was it for my list, really.
Yep.
Rushing is another one. You can rush through the story, slow it down. Um,
yeah. Find your pace.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Sometimes you just
And
want to
don't
get
be
the
afraid.
story out, get to the point. You're thinking, no, there needs to be build up. You've got to build up tension, and
Yeah,
yeah, that's all important.
and don't be afraid to chuck things out. I remember in one of my early drafts of Born of Empire again, I had them arriving on the planet, and I just sort of had a random space station, and they landed, and then I thought, oh, that's so dull. So I knew what that chapter had to do with them, and so I ripped it out and I wrote it again, and I put in this space station, and it was unique in its own
yeah,
way, and that sort of made that chapter more useful by
yeah.
having a unique.
I think that's a really good point, and I learnt this with my first book, is every chapter has got to move the story on.
Yeah.
I had this great chapter and I loved it, and it was describing all the training my protagonist went through at the training centre, and I thought it was so interesting, but nothing actually happened in that
Yeah.
chapter. I was just telling you stuff, info dump. It all looked
Yeah.
great, the equipment she used. So I went back to that and put something in there that was really quite crucial. Something happened to her while she was training and whatever. So I think every single chapter you think, has that moved the story on, or have you just maybe had some beautiful writing, but it's not actually
Yeah.
told us anything apart from describing it? But cut it, but save it, because you'll use those words elsewhere. I have a file that I just put, I've got cut work and anything like that gets into another file, and I might use it later. I might use it in a different book, but you know, it's got to be relevant to the story.
Excellent. Right then. Should we leave it there then for this week?
I think we could go on for
I think
hours,
we
but I
will.
think
Or
that's
else,
enough.
yes, exactly. I think yeah. So I'm going to say it's a fond farewell from myself.
Thank you for hosting, Mark, and goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.